16 years ago this week, on the July 4th, 2005 episode of Raw from Sacramento, California, Shawn Michaels and Hulk Hogan were victorious over Kurt Angle and Carlito. After the match, as they posed together, Michaels super kicked Hogan in the face, turning heel and setting up the big Icon versus Icon match for SummerSlam, which Hogan won. And then the very next night, Michaels was back to being a babyface and started a program with Chris Masters. I so wish we would have gotten a proper heel run for Michaels, one that was longer than 6 weeks, but we never got another one again. 15 years ago this week, on July 3rd, 2006, Raw was live from Philadelphia with a triple threat match for the WWE Championship, with Rob Van Dam defending against both Edge and John Cena. This was the first time the WWE title had changed hands on Raw in 5 years. Edge walked out with the championship that night, and the very next day, RVD would lose his ECW World Championship to the Big Show before being suspended for a month. So how did we get here? What happened here? The night before, Van Dam was riding with Sabu. They were going from one show to the next. They're driving down the road. They get stopped by an Ohio State trooper for speeding. When the troopers searched the vehicle, they found 18 grams of marijuana, 9 Teslac pills, which at the time was used to treat late-stage breast cancer, but also was used by steroid users to prevent breast growth, 5 Vicodin pills, and what was described as, quote, other drug paraphernalia. They were arrested. They later posted bond. Van Dam was hoping to keep the arrest quiet because Sabu's first suggestion was, we got to tell Vince. We got to call Vince. And Van Dam said, no, what the hell are you what are you doing? No. He doesn't have to know. Nobody has to know. Meanwhile, once they got to the building, word had traveled fast. Vince McMahon knew, and everybody knew what had happened. And plans were quickly made to get both belts off of him as quickly as possible and to suspend him. And Van Dam said that he was fined $100 by the company for possession of marijuana, but he estimates that the suspension ended up costing him around $40,000. And despite that, he claims that month off was one of the best months of his contract, because he had grown so tired of being on the road so much, he saw it as a blessing. I hope that I can one day be successful enough to lose $40,000 and consider it a blessing. 13 years ago this week, on the June 30th, 2008 episode of Monday Night Raw. A lot of Raw history this week in history. CM Punk cashed in his Money in the Bank briefcase and pinned Edge to win the World Heavyweight Championship. This was right after Jim Ross had been drafted from Raw to SmackDown, so they had JR come out here in Oklahoma City and give a farewell speech, which was interrupted by Edge, who gloated about Raw having no champion, with Triple H having been drafted to SmackDown with the WWE title. Both belts were on the blue brand. And he said that he would never be appearing on Raw again after this, until the next draft. Batista came out. He beat the crap out of Edge, who had beaten him at Night of Champions 24 hours earlier. And with Edge laid out, that allowed Punk to cash in. He brought a referee down to the ring with him. The bell rang. He picked up Edge, gave him the GTS. And CM Punk brought the big gold belt back to the Raw brand. 12 years ago this week, on June 29th, 2009, 2 Mexican mini wrestlers, twin brothers Alberto and Alejandro Jimenez, both 34 years old, were found dead of an apparent overdose in a hotel room not far from Arena, Mexico. When WWE and AAA started working together in 1997, AAA sent a group of Mexican minis to work for WWE, some of whom were repackaged as mini versions of existing WWE stars. So for example, if you were watching like I was back then, you might remember that we had mini Goldust, and we had mini Mankind, and we had mini Vader. I think those might have been the only 3. They had other minis as well, but the ones who were kind of mimicking the WWE stars, those were the main ones. These two brothers were Mini Mankind and Mini Vader. After a show here, they were approached by two prostitutes. They went back to their hotel room with them. The ladies spiked their drinks with eye drops containing some kind of drug with the intent of robbing them of their wallets and their cell phones when they passed out, which they did. The women were part of a crime syndicate called La Flirtación, which pulled this stunt before on other men. Usually their victims didn't die, but I guess due to how small they were, the drugs mixed with the drinks, that was enough to prove fatal. And a 44-year-old woman and a 65-year-old woman were later arrested and convicted of double murder, with each woman being sentenced to 47 and a half years in prison. 47 years just wasn't enough. They had to tack on that extra half a year just to make a point. 7 years ago this week, on June 29th, 2014, John Cena won a ladder match for the vacant WWE World Heavyweight Championship, winning his 15th world title at the Money in the Bank pay-per-view. Daniel Bryan was forced to surrender the title, noting that the strength was not coming back in one of his arms after surgery and that he may need another operation to address the issue. WWE did not want they didn't want the title on ice any longer, so he was stripped of it. And it was put up in a ladder match with Cena, Bray Wyatt, Alberto Del Dipshit, Randy Orton, Kane, Sheamus, Cesaro, and Roman Reigns. And Cena's win put him in line to defend the title against Brock Lesnar at SummerSlam, fresh off his ending The Undertaker's streak at WrestleMania. That spot was originally intended for Daniel Bryan. Daniel Bryan was going to be massacred by Brock Lesnar at SummerSlam, but Cena ended up in the spot instead, which I actually think had far more impact. I don't think it would have been nearly as shocking if it was anybody but Cena in that spot getting beaten as badly as he was. I suspect the fan reaction to that match would not have been nearly as favorable as it was, were it Daniel Bryan getting annihilated instead of John Cena. I think people would have had a very different reaction to the match that night. Also on this show, Seth Rollins won the Money in the Bank ladder match just weeks after he turned on his Shield brothers and aligned with the Authority. He beat Dean Ambrose, Dolph Ziggler, Jack Swagger, Rob Van Dam, and Kofi Kingston to win the briefcase. Rollins would hold on to that thing until cashing in at WrestleMania 31 in the main event. A few days later, on July 2nd, Tennille Dashwood, then known as Emma, was fired by WWE after being arrested days earlier and charged with shoplifting a $21 iPad case from a Walmart in Hartford, Connecticut. WWE has come to terms on the release of WWE diva Emma as of today, July 2nd, 2014. WWE wishes Emma the best in all her future endeavors. That was the announcement. Her lawyer said that she bought $30 worth of items at a self-checkout machine and simply forgot to scan the case. And employees at the Walmart later confirmed that she did pay for all of the items save for the iPad case, which was, quote, improperly scanned. She was ordered by the court to perform 1 day of community service, take an online course, and then the charge was dismissed. Within hours of firing her, WWE reversed course and rehired her, amid fan backlash over how they would fire her after not doing the same to Jack Swagger or Cameron of the Funkadactyls, who had been arrested previously on DUI charges. The company said in a statement, upon further evaluation, WWE has reinstated Tennille Dashwood, WWE diva Emma, but will take appropriate punitive action for her violation of the law. I love it. Yes, they will take away her iPad and force her to use an Android tablet instead. You can think of nothing worse. And finally, 6 years ago this week on July 4th, 2015, WWE aired a live network special from Sumo Hall in Tokyo, Japan called The Beast in the East, built around Brock Lesnar wrestling Kofi Kingston for the first time. This went only marginally better for Kofi than their second match did. At least this one lasted longer than 8 seconds. And Finn Balor won the NXT Championship from Kevin Owens in an excellent match. I know Balor had a big following in Japan before coming to WWE, but I remain convinced, and I said this back then and I still believe this to this day, I remain convinced that had he not gotten injured a couple of months earlier, it would have been Kenta as Hideo Itami, winning the title that night from Owens and not Balor. Kenta never did get his big moment. And that is this week. This very busy week. They all seem very busy, but this one especially busy. In wrestling history.